So when should I update my healthcare directive? My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. Today we're going to look at one of those important documents in your estate plan and when you should update it. So one of the most common questions I get about estate planning documents is when do they expire? And the simple answer is that most estate planning documents do not expire. However, when we're dealing with things like powers of attorney and your living will, they do expire upon your death, meaning that the powers they grant do not pass on to the same person after you're gone. That's when your will and your personal property memorandum take over. But while you're alive and you've created your healthcare directive or your healthcare power of attorney, a lot of people will ask, when should I update those documents? So when you think of your estate plan, you have your will, you have your powers of attorney, you have a living will, you have maybe a trust, you have a HIPAA authorization. All of these documents go into creating that first estate plan. And there's a lot of documents, and it can be overwhelming when you're done to think, I'm going to have to update these again. And the simple answer is you don't actually have to update them. Unless your power of attorney has a specific date when it expires, your documents will still be good, and they'll be good for a while. I constantly meet with clients who have estate planning documents from 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago. Their kids were young, they have guardianship provisions now, those kids are all grown, they're married, they have grandkids now, and they need to update all of their estate plan documents. So they say, oh, I know I need to update my will, but what about those other documents? What about that power of attorney? What about that healthcare directive? And the answer is you should also update them when you update the rest of your estate plan documents. However, your healthcare directive and healthcare power of attorney can often be updated more frequently. So they don't tend to be as formal, meaning a lot of times they're just a state form that has to be notarized and witnessed depending upon your state. And your healthcare directive, your healthcare power of attorney has a bunch of different questions for you to answer, some guidance for whoever has that power of attorney to make decisions for you. So these documents are important to be updated because if you're married and your spouse is your healthcare power of attorney, your healthcare directive, your healthcare decision maker, and something happens to your spouse, who are the backups? So if you did your healthcare directive, let's say 20 years ago, and it was just your spouse and then maybe your brother, well, now your brother has died before you and your children are over 18, you can update that healthcare directive so that your children can be the backup decision makers if your husband or your wife is unavailable to make those decisions for you. So it's important to understand that those documents can be updated, and they should be updated when we have those major changes. Just like any other document, if somebody is appointed to a fiduciary role, an important role in your documents, and let's say you no longer want them to make decisions, or they've died and they can't make those decisions anymore, you want to make sure your documents are updated so we have the right people in the right roles in case anything happens to you. The other time you may have to update your documents is if you're using a state-based form. The state may update the form at some point. So it's pretty common that the forms will stay standard. They don't tend to make a lot of changes, maybe every 15 to 20 years, maybe a little bit less. Your state may update your healthcare directive form, maybe update the HIPAA form if it's coming from the federal government. But whatever form it is, they occasionally get updated, and at that point you have the choice to update them. So most of the time, if a power of attorney form is updated by the state, it doesn't make the prior forms invalid, or else we'd have a mess on our hands and everybody would have to come in and sign new forms. It just means there's a new form available for you. And if you find out that new form's available, whether your attorney has reached out and said, listen, we have a new power of attorney form, we have a new healthcare directive form that we want you to sign, or maybe you read about it in the paper or in a magazine, when you know that there's a new form out there, it's a good idea to reach out to your estate planning attorney and find out whether or not that new form would be beneficial for you. Especially if you signed your old document 15 or 20 years ago, it's probably time to update it anyway, so that new form gives you that kick that you need to get things moving and get that new form in place for you and your family. Your healthcare directive should be updated when there's been major life changes, or if the form has been updated, or frankly, if you just want to make some changes. Let's say you have a different view on how you'd like to be treated for your healthcare directive. Maybe you want your decisions treated differently than you did 10 years ago. But whatever the reason, if you feel like you want to update the document, make sure you're getting it updated. If you have more questions about your healthcare directive or other powers of attorney, you can go to my website, andrewmayers.com. There's a red legal strategy session button on the front page. If you click that, you'll be taken to my calendar. We'll set up a 15 or 20-minute phone call where we could talk about your powers of attorney, your healthcare directives, and whether or not now is the right time to get them updated. If you like this video, you can hit the thumbs up or the like button below. You can go over to YouTube and subscribe, or go to 𝙃𝙀𝙍𝙀𝙊𝙒. So wherever you are, don't just let that power of attorney sit in the drawer for year after year. If it's time to make an update, reach out, work with the professionals, and make sure it gets updated.